Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sven and I hope you're doing great. Recently on my channel we looked at the Color Space Transform OFX, and today we're continuing with this plugin and we'll go even deeper into its functionality. So if you haven't already, please watch the other video first. The link is up here and in the video description. So far we know that the Color Space Transform OFX, or CST in short, can convert any input color space to any output color space that has been published as a white paper. We know that the conversion is not happening directly from input to output, but it uses the XYZ color space as an intermediate. And we know that gamut conversions always happen in a linear domain. For that reason, any setting in the CST always goes to XYZ linear first. We talked briefly about tone mapping, looking at the different methods, and learned that you should only use it if there's a conversion from or to a display involved, but not when you simply convert scene color spaces to other scene color spaces. And lastly, we looked at what the UOTF buttons at the bottom even mean. Today we will look at saturation mapping, how you can get better results with a little trick I found. We will look at white point adaptation, and we'll discuss non-RGB models that are also available in the CST. Maybe let's start with those. The easiest ones that you probably have heard of before are HSV and HSL. Those two are pretty similar and they remap the three color channels red, green and blue to the new channels hue, saturation and value or luminance. Another non-RGB model is the LAB color space that consists of luminance as the first channel and the A and B channels that contain all of the color information. It is really similar to YUV that also has a luminance channel Y and also the two color channels U and V. The important part about all of these models in the CST, however, is the fact that once you select a model here in the color space dropdown, its gamma dropdown does not have any effect anymore. Whatever gamma you choose, it doesn't make a difference. Now, when we go back to normal RGB color spaces and we have a quick look at a white paper, we can see several things that define a color space. There are the coordinates of each primary colors as we discussed in a previous video, but there's also a fourth coordinate for something called white point. What does that mean and what is white even? If you are in bright daylight, you might consider the sun to be white. If you're looking at paper, you can say that's white. And you would say so even if you're looking at the paper in a relatively dim evening setting. Our eyes adapt to surrounding light and we kind of subtract this surrounding from the colors in front of us. And the same is true for color spaces. For cinema projectors, for example, we use the P3 color space. Sometimes with a D65 white point, sometimes with D60. If we look at the coordinates of these two in the CIE chromaticity diagram, we can see that D60, which by the way stands for daylight 6000 Kelvin, is slightly warmer than D65, which is daylight 6500 Kelvin. Technically speaking, when every one of the three color channels has the same value, we end up with a gray color. And when this value is really high, we approach white. The white enters current color space. But each color space has its own definition of white. There are plenty of white points, but to be fair, for color grading there are just a handful that are important. In fact, most color spaces actually use the same white point, that is D65. But we saw D60 for cinema projections, DCI for the XYZ color space, and then there's also the ACES white point. So what is white point adaptation then? When this is disabled, Resolve only applies the matrices from the input gamut to XYZ and XYZ to the output gamut. So let's say we convert every white gamut 3 to AP0 for an ACES pipeline. Now the entire image feels tinted. When we compare this to the official transform and the ACES Transform OFX, we see that the CST version is way cooler and not neutral anymore. When we enable white point adaptation, however, we can see that it fixes the problem. Resolve adds another matrix in the pipeline that compensates the shift of the white point from D65 to ACES. Again, most color spaces use D65 anyway, and Resolve really helps you with the checkbox automatically, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about the setting. But if you for some reason have to convert the white point at a certain point in time, for example from D65 to D60, you should disable the adaptation to make it work. Now let's talk about saturation mapping. I've seen a lot of people here on YouTube enable it by default and give the general advice that you should do so every time, especially when you go from scene to display. But I actually found a better technique that allows for greater flexibility. You see, the problem with saturation mapping inside the CST is that it is applied after the tone mapping and in the output gamut. So that means a lot of the colors in the frame are already of high saturation. Saturation mapping now has to work quite a lot to tame any problematic color. A better way I found is to use it in the second node before. This way the curve is way more gentle. As we can see on this test pattern, the saturation mapping applies a way nicer gradient of highly saturated colors to white than when we use it in the traditional way. Let's maybe have a quick look at the order of operations in the CST again to fully understand what's going on. Let's say we convert DaVinci White Gamut to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. We start with the EOTF, so the conversion from DaVinci Intermediate to linear. Then the linearized DaVinci White Gamut is getting tone mapped, and we'll go over tone mapping in a second as well. This linearized tone mapped DaVinci White Gamut now gets converted to XYZ linear, where a chromatic adaptation would then happen. In this case, both input and output use D65, so we can ignore that. Then XYZ linear converts to Rec 709 linear, then the linear Rec 709 receives the saturation mapping before we finally add the Gamma 2.4 together with the forward UUTF. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't it make more sense to apply tone mapping in the output gamut or in an intermediate space instead of the input gamut? At least in my opinion, yes it would, but I didn't build the CST, I only studied it and figured out what is going on by replicating every single step manually. But with this knowledge in mind, we can actually build our own custom color pipelines to achieve better results. For example, changing the order of operations, like putting the saturation mapping before the actual gamut conversions. Now, one final thing about tone mapping that I see a lot of people do wrong. You know that you can either use tone mapping with predefined values or input your own custom values. And most people here on YouTube, very known ones as well, give some bad advice here. You see, in the previous video we talked about maximum linear values in the scene color space. So, for example, every White Gamut 4 log C4 would have a logarithmic value of 1 mapped to a linear value of over 400, while flog would map that to something around 7. And these values matter. The custom nit values in the CST are actually representing those values multiplied by a factor of 100. So let's take Rec 709 for example, which would map its value of 1 to a linear value of 1 because it is a display linear color space. Multiply 1 by 100, we end up with the 100 nits that Rec 709 is defined for. So we can type in 100 in the CST. Let's take flog's value of 7 and we end up with roughly around 700 nits. DaVinci Intermediate, for example, would have a linear value of 100, which multiplied by 100 equals 10,000. And this is why the maximum value you can type in here is actually 10,000. So far so good, but what if we use Airy log CV4 or Red log 3G10? These color spaces would far exceed the limitations of 10,000, and this would mean that by using tone mapping, we would actually clip away highlight detail. And this is the crucial part: if we don't use custom values like everybody tells you to, but we trust Resolve to use its predefined values instead, we actually preserve this detail. In my opinion, you should only ever use a custom value here if you really know what you're doing. And let's face it, almost no one I talked to about this topic really knew what these numbers actually stand for. You can also see that when we use a too high value, we don't actually use the full latitude of the color space, because we push the values too far down. So, I know there was a lot of information, but that's essentially all you need to know about the Color Space Transform OFX. It took me quite a while to figure all of this out. When I started, there were no tutorials or blog posts about these topics, which is why I wanted to make these videos available for free. If you want to support the channel, please take a look at the DCTLs I have linked in the video description and consider subscribing to not miss on upcoming episodes. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.